It's 2:06. I will go ahead and call our meeting of the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee, or excuse me, gosh, we're the Amherst Building and Grounds to order today. And I would like to officially welcome Greg Fritz, who came to our last meeting as a community member and has joined the committee as a community representative. So thanks, Greg, for zooming in today. And welcome, Brad. Our only item on the agenda today is to go over the updates that we discussed last Friday. Hopefully everyone received those in an email. Since we do have folks zooming in. Since, can you mute?
It's fine. Well, wait, so if Ingrid told you to do that, then maybe there's something that I don't know.
No. She had me do it when I started at the home job.
Oh,
That
okay.
I used for the.
Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah, but just generally speaking, by the time we're doing a little bit of work, that folder. That's,
So we can't hear us. Maybe that mutes us.
Okay, so since you're not working on that, I would just make.
Brad, there's some background noise on your
I don't
end.
know if that means they're just taking a Revit file from there and moving it back here.
Okay.
We'll just tackle that when that time comes.
Hey, Brad.
Yes,
Brad, we're hearing background noise on your end.
you're hearing background noise.
Ingrid's behind you.
Yeah, I think that's Fritz.
Or it might be Greg, but
Yeah.
I thought Greg was,
But I
Greg's
think-
muted.
Whoever's running the Zoom can mute that.
So
We
Greg's
sound good
muted.
I heard like Ingrid's name.
I did
who
too.
works with Brad, right?
Yeah,
So that was
I think
the
we're
only-
good now.
Brad is now muted. I mean, he's now muted.
Okay, great. So if we're not in a Q&A, we'll just ask everyone other than Brad who's speaking to stay muted. Because we have folks joining us on Zoom and in the room, I'm going to ask everyone to really make an effort to limit sidebar conversations because it's very hard to hear on the Zoom. It's hard to hear the recordings. So with that, I know Roger has to pop out for a few minutes. So Roger, before I hand it over to Brad, do you have anything you want to touch on before you're going to leave and then come back and rejoin us? Is
Yeah,
there
I'm
anything
good
you need
for
to
right
touch on?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm good.
All right, great. So with that, Brad, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Can I share my screen?
I think so. This,
I'm not seeing that option on here.
Steve, are you the host?
Multiple people can share.
You should be able to, Brad.
So it's the regular in the Zoom, his Zoom should say share screen.
Ah. Okay. So that image is very informative, right? It's telling you a lot. Okay. All right, so this is the option 2.1, as it were. And we try to respond to the comments from last time. I was relatively pleased on how this turned out. I hope you are too. Basically, for features of this, we kept the stars, my time, and associated spaces intact over here. We took off some square footage on the corner here, which actually opened up a little bit of space on this corner for windows. Sorry, I got a tickle here. I got a cough a few times. We have the teachers over here in the corner. They're remote for both the classrooms and the administration, so this might be good positioning. We still have the nurse on the corner, but near the classrooms, which gives good monitoring. We've taken the special education functions and moved them into the general classroom area. I'm sorry, I think I'm going to have to excuse myself and get some water. I'll be right back.
go ahead.
Slick. Bumped it out, added some space. Slick.
So the big thing I noticed that I do wanna touch on is I sent it to Shannon and Steve. Is our breakdown for classrooms, like we had 900 square feet for first grade, so forth, going on through is specific. If you look at the design, it's obviously architectural or building. Like second grade, rather than 900, they're coming in 934, 934, 934. Just adding up the first through fifth grade classrooms is almost an additional 5,000 square feet to that, which throwing 400 per square foot, it's almost $2 million.
Say that again for him?
So on our project sheet with all of the classrooms, remember it was like, hey, we're removing pre-K and kindergarten, and then first grade, we're looking for 900 square foot rooms, and we were good with
The
that.
summer work.
The summer work that
Yeah.
we did. Then we got into the additional. Then we got into the additional, we called out what the square footage for rooms are. As Brad goes through with his architectural and building, these rooms are coming in at 934, 934. They're over what we were asking for. So I wanted to take a look and see, are we able to get to the 900 as requested? Because with this overage, we're over 4,000 square feet from what we originally requested, which is possibly $2 million to the project.
So do you think the 34 feet is the Jack and Jill bathrooms you wanted?
No, it's actually that those aren't including bathrooms. Bathrooms are additional 67 square feet. So first grade has a 928 square foot room with a 67 square foot toilet.
Gotcha.
And I wondered if they were actually the Jack and Jill bathrooms, because each room has a toilet right now on the map in first grade.
And that's a great question. So Brad, did we include the Jack and Jill bathrooms?
I don't think he's back yet.
I can see.
Oh, yes, okay, I can't,
Oh, yeah.
I'm flying.
And did we say Jack and Jill for second, third, and
I
fourth?
know, I have to look at her.
I think we said first.
We definitely said first, and I thought we had said
First and
second.
second is what they.
And
then we're doing gang.
I would say that's one of my worries, is there's not enough restrooms upstairs. There's one set of bathrooms for third, fourth, and fifth grade.
So we did Jack and Jill.
So I
1, 2.
wondered about proposing on the second floor where there are staff bathrooms, transitioning those into single stall bathrooms that could be gender neutral too.
Yeah.
And just, in those corners of that space, like just go two bathrooms by third grade classrooms, 2 bathrooms by, the fifth grade classrooms, and then they could be used by students in that side of the building, and then you still have the hallway bathroom.
This is the old plan, and this is the new.
We called out, in our review, we called out Jack and Jill bathrooms for second grade.
Yeah.
So first grade is individual bathrooms,
First grade was individual, second grade, we called out Jack and Jill.
and third, fourth, fifth
Yeah.
are outside, not in the classroom.
Not in the classroom, and right now there's only one set of bathrooms on the second floor.
Is he back yet?
He is back. Brad, go ahead. We were just having an internal discussion, if you're good.
Yeah, that's great. I did hear the thing about the square footages. One of the things that I've learned over time when doing these conceptual layouts is if I'm too exacting on the square footage and I give you a 900 square foot classroom at the get-go, as we impose structure, chases, other appurtenances, the room shrinks and we end up undersized and have to go for a variance with the DOE. So we've kind of learned to start a little bit bigger with these overall square footages for the classrooms. And then as we go, we kind of tighten it up and shrink it down a little bit. So yes, Roger's right. These rooms are oversized, but not by a lot. Not in the grand scheme of things.
All right, Brad, would you like to keep walking us through the updates? And then we can do questions. We'll go around and do questions when you're.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about the nurse, we kept the toilet rooms, the electrical, the elevator, all that in the same place. Stairs are in the same spot. First grade classrooms start here on this side of the toilet with one classroom. Unfortunately, we would like to have them all together, and then 6 first grade classrooms all the way down here, 6 second grade classrooms on the other side of the corridor with a second grade classroom on the other side of the mechanical room with a flex classroom next to it. The flex classroom speaking of oversized classrooms, it's the one classroom where I'm always comfortable making it a little bit bigger. Because as a flex classroom, generally you wanna offer more flexibility, hence the name, but also, there's a little bit of storage space in the room. So that way, since you're gonna have possibly multiple uses for it, different users can store stuff in the cabinets for when they're using it that time of the week. Um, upstairs. This is hopefully what we talked about. I think it's what we talked about. I wasn't able to get 5 classrooms in here efficiently. But 4 fifth grade classrooms and then 2 fifth grade classrooms next to each other, which is a mutual support thing too, which is nice. But unfortunately I couldn't get the 7th fifth grade classroom in really close by unless I put it on the other side of the corridor, which I thought was a pretty good compromise. This room is significantly oversized. And the reason for that is it's less efficient as a shape. So I try not to punish the teacher with an efficient shape by giving them the same size square footage as everybody else.
And those would be your fifth grade, if I'm like your STEM rooms, right? You would maybe use, because there's a larger fifth grade room on the other corner too, because of the shape, I think. So if you have a couple of those kind of larger rooms, you could maybe target those for science rooms.
And we can play around with, these things quite a bit. I mean, if you wanted to make this, we could put another staff toilet here. We could put a storage room here. There's a lot of things we can do. This is just trying to get the overall organization right. So we've got on this side of the line, as it were, this this is your phase 1 line right here. So on this side of the line, we have OTPT teachers, your psychologist, your assistant principal right in the middle of all of the instructional spaces for 2 grades. Well, actually it's not 2 anymore. It's 4th grade only. But they're at the end of the wing, essentially. Right next to your flex classrooms, which are right next to each other. We could have the movable partition between them, so you could open the whole thing up. The satellite nurse with the satellite nurse's toilet right next to it, nice central location. SLP. This individual instructional space is essentially an extra room. It's not in the program, so it just seemed to work in terms of a general layout. So, there's an opportunity there if there's some other instructional need or some other utility use that we want to be talking about. This big X right here is a shaft for mechanical units coming down from the roof. These are small shafts as well. When we get deeper into this, we'll find out how many of those we need. I think you're going to need at least this one. On this end, we've got the 2 third grade classrooms, as well as these 5 third grade classrooms over here with their support right across the hall for the teachers and small group instruction. Try to keep these close. This is actually a really great location, I think, being central with small group instruction for the 5th grade, and the 4th grade is over here for that. Again, close to the grade. That's pretty much it. I guess the last thing is, I did send you this. So this is just the overlay. We talked about this on Friday. And I just plopped the new layout over it. So this is the outline of the old bond vote building footprint. This is the back of your existing school to give you a sense of scale. Everything else is the same as you saw on Friday.
So, I'm sorry,
The big difference is you got more.
Sorry, that outline, you're saying that's what was on the ballot last year, correct?
Yes, this dashed line right here was the last year and the year before the building footprint, yeah.
Great.
Building is bigger than what we saw on Friday. I mean, I kind of prepped you for that, so I know it was no surprise, but we're up at 135, almost 136. Roger's correct as we pare down the room sizes maybe a little bit, we're gonna gain some efficiency. And we can tighten that up a little bit.
At what point in the process does that happen?
Um,
Close to
150.
Yeah, I can pull it up.
if we have a comfort level in what we've got as an organization for the building, it can happen in the near term. I would caution you strongly not to get too enthusiastic about that. I think you're better off sticking with the sizes that you have here. And getting to your bond vote, with these sizes, but it's not my building, it's your school, so it's however you want to do it.
So say that again, just not squeeze the classroom size, is that what you're saying? Yes.
Gives you more flexibility in the future.
Yeah, the overall square footage was a big sticking point for a lot of folks last year.
So what was the number?
That's why I'm pulling it up right now. I think it was 166, but give me a second. Sorry, what were we last year? 143, 234?
Right.
And Wyndham, Golden Brook is what, like 150? Ish.
Roger, no.
That was a refrain that we heard in the community last year, right? Golden Brook's the largest elementary school in New Hampshire, and they have more students than we are, and we're building something close to that, right? So I'm just trying to keep in mind what some of the pain points were. I don't wanna
So let's reduce the project by 10,000 square feet? Oh,
Yeah.
10,000 square feet.
But does that school have, how many grades are in there?
yeah, it's the
Is it
same.
K through
I
5?
think
or
it's
one?
Pre-K through 4.
A pre-K 4, so it's the same number.
Okay.
Do they do the similar like special education program we do where all the kids are in house?
I don't know, and if that's what's pushing us over, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that's
I'm not trying to underserve what we need. I just, we need to be able to describe that if that's the situation, and I think when this goes to the board, when we get this tidied up, that will be a question that the board's going to have.
Is it like open
Yeah,
discussion
open,
at
please.
this point? Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a wonder about the gym. I feel like it's a really large gym for a 1st through 5th grade building. When I am not a huge sports basketball person, when I Googled the square footage of a high school basketball court, it was around 4,200 square feet. We've got a gym that's almost double that in the center of the school right now. When you are including the bleachers, and I know we want to, there's a community component, but we also have a high school, and we don't need to duplicate a high school. In my opinion, a high school sized gym in the center of an elementary school is just a wonder I have. I feel like when I see that, the bleachers and some of the gym, maybe some easy square footage that could be gained back if we're looking for it. It just seems really large.
I just have a question, does the town rent the space when the rec department uses the facilities at the school? It's just communal, there's no type of.
Is there I think there's a charge, but Roger could answer.
I was just wondering
I think
if there
there's a
was some
chargeback
type
maybe
of
for
transfer of fees or anything.
janitorial services, maybe.
Okay, that's fine, cause I know like during basketball, like the rec kids basketball. The high school is very challenging because it's so small, when there's a lot of teams playing there, it's a big court and you have a couple games going on, there's like no place to sit. Cause you have to go up in that mezzanine area to view.
Because when you do multiple games.
Yeah, it's very challenging for people to sit there and actually enjoy the game. But that's a great point, that it is a big gym, but it's just finding the uses to need that size. Is it something that the town can use also for different activities or other types of events in that space?
Is this the smallest space it is for any bleachers, 2,000 square feet?
What do you mean?
Like, can you still have bleachers for 1,000 square
Brad, did you hear Steve's question?
It's, there's nothing rigid about the bleachers, in terms of their size. It's 20 by 100. Additional square footage to the room. And if you wanted to reduce the number of rows, or I should say the number of people, then you would reduce the width by the corresponding amount. So instead of 20 feet, if you did, if you did 15 feet, then instead of 500 people, you're doing 3/4 of that.
feet? Yeah, that'd be fine with me. I'd reduce the bleachers.
Well, we talked about making bleachers an option. That's what Roger had suggested.
An option on the warrant?
Yeah,
Ooh, no, that's a little money for a warrant.
not
option.
enough.
Yeah, but I
It's,
think all you need for this is 2 rows of bleachers.
Yeah.
How big is the gym at Mont Vernon Village School? Does anyone in here know?
It's gotta be like the size of our multipurpose room right now, right? If you look at our
It's not that
multipurpose
big.
room in the CAF, it's 5,000.
No bleachers there.
And
Yeah, it's not.
Which is an elementary school. I mean, my point is that I questioned the gym size earlier on too, when we looked at this. So there's 2 things. I do think the town would use a full-size gym if we had it. I think our recreation program, definitely would benefit from that. However, I don't know if the savings are significant enough, if we take it down to like a standard elementary school size gym, that gives us a mini gym in the multi-purpose room after hours, and then a smaller gym that could still be used
Oh,
for
yeah.
youth programming,
Youth
it's not
program.
full court, right? Like, I still think there's community benefit to that, and if that helps the project pass because it's more palatable to the taxpayer for the cost, maybe that's somewhere to go and something to look at. I don't know.
I wondered if, and this might not be possible on the footprint, if you were cutting back on some of the gym, are you able to bring in some of the music art rooms and cut off even more square footage, because you wouldn't need the same level of space inside the building. And it may not be possible with the footprint, but
Yeah.
if you took the bleachers off to begin with, right? And you're still looking at a gym of 7,000 square feet, and maybe you were able to still do a row or 2 of bleachers within that 7,000 square feet and it not impact floor space too much, give the rec what they needed. Rather than if it was all 7,000 square feet, rather than it all being almost 10,000 square feet.
The building a gym to not do at least the gym right is, it's not gonna save you enough money, and to have it bad is just, you know what I mean?
What's is there a square foot cost, like range? Is it 300 to 500?
4 is what Roger's in, right?
Yeah, 400 overall. I don't know how much specifically a gym is
Yeah.
cheaper than a classroom, just not a lot.
Generalized, it's $400 a square foot.
That's what we're talking about.
So if you're cutting, you're 800,000, right?
Bleachers, I mean, like,
The gym
I
says
agree. If you're gonna build a new
7,075
school, you build it right. You do it right the first time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we could have-
Oh, okay, got it in there.
community could have it at 6 to 10 o'clock at night.
We have practice here in the evenings for rec basketball, and it's great for one individual group, but in a gym this size, you could have 2 practices
Right.
playing, 2 different teams practicing.
No one's ever regretted having an additional gym space in a community.
I think it
Regretted
could be-
not having it,
Yeah,
but it is money.
cause the other thing is too, is during the winter time, if it is, and the kids can't go outside, is it possible for a gym this size to allow kids to take turns in the gym as recess? That could be an option too.
And it's definitely like
No longer.
another
Yeah.
amazing, great
Yeah.
full group space. I guess I have not experienced this enough to know like the scope and size of what this is actually gonna look like in the center of the school, right? So where does this compare? Is this the same exact size as Souhegan's gym? Like, just, is this larger than the middle school gym? Like, these are just the wonders I have about what this actually
No,
looks
and-
like in
and I
this
think-
space.
I think you're right in those wonders, and I think that when we go to bond, that's something that will come up in our community
Yeah.
as well, right? Like if we're talking about a gym in an elementary school that's bigger than, you know, the high school, that
Mhm.
will be something that could get flagged as what are they thinking and why are we doing that? So I think we need to at least talk through these things.
In they built the school, they advertised on the slide to present the addition to the high school, a college-sized gym. At the floor, people got up and said, we don't need a college-sized gym. They cut the space for the gym. It was the biggest mistake they've ever made. Because now the kids are 1 inch, the bench is 1 inch from the playing surface, dangerous every time. You have to walk across the playing surface to get to the bleachers.
That's not a high school,
That was a high school.
right?
And it's the only gym in the entire community.
Yeah. So there it is, I hear the
So
mistake
it's
there,
It's
but
regret, so I don't think you need 500 bleachers
No.
in there, if you're not gonna use it for school.
No.
If you're not gonna use it for school, you don't need 500, 100%. But I think you need 2 bleachers.
Greg, I know you're there on the Zoom, and I'm sorry, I don't have a computer in front of me, so I just wanna make sure if you have any questions or comments that you have an opportunity to get those in.
Thanks, I'll try to be quiet, but I just want to object to the statement that no one ever regrets buying a gym. I mean, I think the people paying for it that don't use it would regret it. Just, I want to keep in mind, a lot of people are going to be asked to pay for this thing that are not going to be using the gym. So I agree with the statement that we should focus on the educational value, or if there is a rent, passive income kind of vision through rec department or whatever, that's clearly enunciated ahead of time, but that's all my thoughts at this moment.
Great, thank you.
John, Christine, do you guys have any?
Overall, I think with the town using the gym, we gotta sell that feature. And then I think the voters will go for it. So I'm with the gym, as is.
I'm not convinced you need 500 bleachers.
Yeah, I think the bleachers are too
I
many,
think you have
100%.
I'm not convinced of that, I don't know, it's not going to, it's Souhegan, you don't get 500 kids at the game, at the
No,
varsity.
I think you could cut back a little on the bleachers. I
think
think
cut
it's a
back,
lot of
because-
space.
You're talking about pull-out style features,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, because you're just not gonna have 500 people.
So the only question I have in regards to the size of the bleachers is, are you intending to have an all-school assembly on the bleachers?
Potentially, we also have the cafeteria space with the stage though, so most assemblies occur with the stage. There could be opportunities that we're using the gym, but I feel like having, like, my mind is already exploding at the idea of having 2 dedicated spaces, right? So I think you'd be able to fit everyone there. It wouldn't matter to me if they were all sitting in bleachers either right now. Like right now, we all sit on the floor in the NPR.
AMS, they sit on the floor too, they can't fit
Yeah.
their entire population on bleachers either.
I'm curious.
For
what else
assemblies.
to do on bleacher, that
Mhm.
feels.
You have to put the older kids, right? The
Yeah.
4th, 5th graders would head up to the bleachers and you'd have the little kids on the floor. But we fit right now K to 4 in the cafeteria for a whole school assembly at its current size as well.
I was there for a couple last years, and
Mhm.
packed,
It's crowded. We're across the whole space when we're all together.
and the 5th graders are bigger than the kindergartners.
Yes, but they would fit if you're like, envisioning the firsties would move up a little and then you'd have
Yeah,
some.
so you'd still be able to get.
You would be able to do it in the space.
Yeah.
And the gym itself is already 2,000 square feet bigger than the cafeteria is on this
Yeah,
map.
so you can,
Yeah.
everybody goes on the floor.
Floor.
It's fine.
I guess I guess where my head's going with all of this is at some point, somebody will ask about the comparison with the high school. At another point, somebody will ask if we expand this school, are the core spaces of sufficient capacity for the 1,079 student core capacity we had last year if you expanded this school for pre-K and kindergarten? So that would be a hard question to answer in the affirmative if the gym is and the bleachers are too small to handle all school assembly and too small to have two simultaneous gym classes.
So I thought what Roger sent over based on the summer work was a reduced core capacity, a reduced design capacity and a reduced core capacity.
Well, so
We're
if
not
we
looking at
reduce the core
1079.
capacity from 1079 to 864, I think you're having the same discussion. I'm not sure that
Okay.
changes the equation.
Okay.
So we really need Roger to give us that understanding of where this fits with our other community spaces for gyms.
Mhm.
Cause there's no community center here.
There's not, and I also serve on the rec commission and the capital improvement, what is it, the CIP for years has had from the rec department a recreation facility wish list every year for a number of years. So, that is a desire from that town department. Obviously, it's nothing that the town has looked into deeply or put out on a warrant. So, I think it's one of those, if you build it, they'll come. I think it will get used. My concern is, no one's gonna use it if we can't even get it across the finish line. So I think we have to go through this exercise and really understand it. And I can't support a gym at an elementary school that's bigger than the gym at the high school. So I definitely have to know that
Yeah.
first, regardless,
No, so you
No,
can
I
see
agree.
more than 500,
yeah.
right? Doesn't so you can see more, we had the whole school.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can see more than 500. And they have the balcony in there, so yeah, it is not bigger.
Far more.
So that is not bigger, that, and the floor is the floor. You don't really wanna shorten the floor.
So it's like
Yeah.
regulation side.
And I guess for
Yeah.
me, when you're thinking about educational, components, I would rather have one of those very nice retractable walls in the middle of this gym that was soundproof to be able to run 2 classes going than bleachers. To me, that would be more educationally appropriate for the age group of kids, because I could have a first grade class on one side and a 5th grade class on the other side of this gym for PE instruction. Which I know those are costly and take up space too,
But they're not really mutually exclusive things.
So you utilize
No.
the space.
That's a good, having that so you can have 2 at once is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
And I don't think you need primary bleachers.
So when you're talking about cutting the bleachers, are you talking about shrinking the size of the space or just
Yes.
removing the
Yeah,
bleachers out?
Removing the bleachers and
Reducing
Shrinking.
2,000 square feet.
reducing it.
Yeah.
So to your point, Kathleen, is if you did just say, reduce the amount of bleachers, but kept the size and utilize it as another flex space with a retractable curtain, is that possibly something to consider?
I don't think we would need that space if the bleachers weren't there, because if you're still looking at the 7,000 square foot gym, I would still envision a retractable just right in the middle of that.
To
And
separate the space.
you would be gaining spaces larger than our current PE teacher is using
Mhm.
right now for instruction on both sides of that space. My wonder about if you cut the bleachers, could you cut the space a little bit in that IT admin room, the book room, the PE storage room, make everything a little smaller. And then pull that hallway in where you've got the music classes, does that help us in any way in the footprint of the build?
So are you kind of suggesting maybe where the bleachers sideline is if you pulled in some of that space for additional
I don't think,
office?
I
or
wouldn't add
No.
anything there,
just
I would
shrink that
just
space
put it
out?
down.
Okay.
Yeah,
Would
so I
that
guess,
give us-
Brad, that's a question for you. Would that be meaningful at all? So we're saying that we don't feel like we need the bleachers. So is pulling that in, does that help us shrink?
So
Anything.
Hollis Elementary School has a gym with 7 or 8 rows of bleachers. And they've had high school games there when they needed to. Brookline has a similar, elementary school has a similar gym size. There's 2 elementary schools with gyms enough that you could practice, high school practice, you can play there with 7 or 8 rows. We compared to Hollis Brookline all the time. Bedford, I'd have to look, but Hollis, so when I was in Hollis as a basketball coach, there was 1 gym in the entire Hollis and Brookline community. And now there's 4 plus a mini gym at the high school. And they did that because they believe in the more time that we can have kids move, weekends and everything, it's a community health thing. And so they invested in 2 really good gyms, plus they built a new high school. And I know that they're used all the time. But I don't think, I think you need 4 or 5, 2 or 3 bleachers. I just would hate not to be able to have the 5th graders play against Hollis in a rec game on Saturday, real wood floor, in a real place where 50 grandparents can sit and watch.
Do you think that healthy kids aspect is something we could use to our advantage here? I mean, I know it's a little late in the game for us to, approach the town or rec or even develop our own, like, this is a big priority, healthy kids
We
playing.
gotta get kids off screens.
Right, but I mean, do we have the time
Well, I
to
just
do
think
that, to cut that
It's
less?
the value, I mean.
Oh, it's definitely value.
Is this what you value, and does it carry the community, and it can Hollis, it carry they went from 1 high school to 4.
But I feel like if we say it, it's gonna sound like, oh, they're just trying to come up with reasons to have a bigger gym. We need buy-in from the community on that.
I
And
agree.
I don't know if that comes from rec, if that comes
And it
from,
really is, you could
or if we have
commit
time for that.
6 o'clock, it's Key Swell, this becomes how the Amherst Rec Center is 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock, it's Key Swell. They have it, schools are done at 6, except for that gym. And they just simply swap it, the rec director has a little place in there. That's what you have to, and that's the person, you don't want them on rec programs at 10 o'clock, you're busy.
No. No, and I think there's a capability to
What's happening
do
to
that with the way the building's
What's that?
configured too. I mean, rec is using our teaches music classes here. We do ukulele for adults, right? They're in the library. They could use the music room. They could store the instruments in the space because we use the ukuleles too, there's definitely opportunity there. I just want to make sure it's not too big and I don't have enough of an
Well, to
experience of
Shannon's
this.
point, it doesn't matter what the aspirations are, if you can't get across the finish line. But you guys, you have it, because you'll never, you just can't fix it once you do it. It's in the middle of the school, you can't fix it.
Yeah, you can't expand it.
Can't fix
That's
it.
the only thing I see is that
I mean, that's what we're stuck with now, right? Like we've had a lot of
It's a
challenges.
20 or
with
30-year decision.
CMS and
It's a
Clark
30-year
Wilkins
decision, this
core
year.
spaces and
Thank you.
expansion.
So let me ask a question. Coming into this whole process very late, sitting here watching people do good work. Been at it for a while. If you had to say like the 2 or 3 things that you heard as community members on why this project does not pass, what would they be? Because I think we're at a point where we have to take those into consideration and have those answered. And even if it's new dilemmas, if they have new dilemmas with the project, we can't bring a project back that has the same dilemmas, and so I'm asking people who've been on this, what are the 2 or 3 reasons why it didn't pass according to what you hear? I know what I heard, but I've never had this, I never posed the question to the group.
How about we start with you, Steve?
I think what I've experienced, I haven't lived here that long. I've lived here for 8 years, I think. So I'm relatively new to the community. My thing is, I think the thing that I heard, the taxes are high right now as they are. And for us to increase, the tax like $800, for a very extended period of time, that is one of the biggest pushbacks that I have come across, and that there hasn't been the projection that this is gonna have to be done over a long period of time, like a savings, but like there's been no buildup to get to the school with any type of real stewardship of gathering funds to build a new school or put an addition on. That's what I've heard. I'm all for building a new school, and I grew up where I grew up on Cape Cod. I mean, the gym I had in my elementary school was huge, and the high school was enormous. I mean, we had an indoor track and basketball court, so this is kind of really small from what I recall when I was in school a long time ago.
Christine?
Yeah, I think the taxes, I think we heard a lot from folks that are retired, wanna stay in town. And they're not the users of these spaces, so I feel like they don't see the value in it. I mean, I see the value in it. I lived where I grew up, you know, we lived there for 10 years with no kids and the schools were fabulous and our taxes were high. And maybe because I knew at some point I would be using a valuable school system with my own children, but I feel like that population. I don't know, they don't see the value or just can't afford that and don't value it like parents value. So it's similar. The tax piece is where we are, I think.
Greg?
Okay, so, I mean, I keep hearing that repeatedly. I personally don't agree with it. I don't know how popular it is. Obviously, I try to stay in touch with people, but I don't represent the majority. I don't think the price is that important compared to kind of what students saying the value of it. If the gym is going to be used for the community, maybe it should be on the outside instead of the stage eating area, so that has outdoor access. It could be taken out of the plan at the last minute and not be detrimental. I think what is the bare minimum, and I think the overall impression that I've heard from this just one meeting last time was we're compromising, but this really isn't a bare minimum plan. And I know we're all biased where we came from. I came from much poorer communities than Cape Cod. And so we didn't have a lot of these things. And I just think that I don't know how much that represents a lot of people here, but this seems awfully opulent to me. And I don't really hear a good story about how all this is really required. I didn't like, this is a little bit of a side, but I didn't really like the Tuhegan meeting about sharing space, what space is actually available. They really didn't answer that question. So I'm still not convinced this is overall the most valuable plan at the moment. But I think if you could attack that question, how this is at least relatively valued to the next best alternative, working on the two plans we're talking about today, I think are helpful. I think comparing it to realistic solutions and honestly knocking down some of the things we've heard, like, the biggest school in New Hampshire, like, does the program that we're teaching require this space? Is the program we're teaching going to be changed at all? How does the space flex with that? All those kinds of things, thinking about the 30 years, I think those really deserve to be answered respectfully to the people that are objecting things other than just the cost. Thank you.
Can I ask you what you think is opulent about it? Just because I'm looking at it from, the original plan we had. And I feel like there was a lot of stuff in there that we could cut. And I feel like these plans are a good representation of cutting some of those things that I guess weren't absolutely necessary, but would have been a nice to have. So what is it that you see in this plan?
I guess I do think I do question the gym in addition to I can't see what's up in the upper left there, whatever we're calling that other area. The cafeteria area, I think it's called.
Oh, the NPR space?
The NPR space.
Yeah, it'd be nice. Maybe we'd switch them to put the gym so that there's outdoor access. So we're not letting the public into the whole building. Might be nice with bathrooms available to the gym users only and lock down the classroom area. I mean, but in terms of opulence, I haven't seen all of the plans of this year. I'm trying to stay pretty quiet, but that question that I think was asked was why was last year knocked down? I think that was one of the reasons. Is, like you pointed out, there was opulence in there, and there was uncertainty about how it compared to other options. I've been looking forward to hearing about these two designs and how it compares to sort of each other. I guess if those are the two best designs, one is build new and one is essentially repair. I think that's a reasonable comparison, but we haven't had that in this community. We haven't had a discussion on two options. It's always been, this is what we really want. And so that comes across as a little bit more, I think opulent is maybe an imperfect word, but rather than saying that here's the educational value and here's the penalty we pay for not doing it, right? I think those kind of value statements are helpful to people like me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg. John?
There's a couple of things I consider problems that the town board has had. I think prime was the cost. But then also, they were frightened of the traffic ban.
Yeah.
Busing. There was a big scream about that. I hope we've resolved some of the issues, but it's still gonna be backed up. You know, I mean, we've looked at it. The other thing is that, as my co-partner said here, that senior citizens' taxes and the cost of the bond. And we haven't discussed about the bond because of the way the inflation is going now and what we're gonna be paying on the bonds. You know, that's going up, not going down. So the situation is from a year ago, it's almost increased by 15%. Not 5, but 15, the way I'm looking at it, especially cost of materials. So we have to look at it very carefully, and when we put the pricing on this, where's it gonna be?
Yep.
It's gonna be more than the 56 million we did. A lot of cutting we did to get to that. I think it's gonna be more than that.
Yeah, that's my concern too. And to answer your question, Mike, you know, when the Amherst School Board did a survey, a post-election survey, and there were some themes that came out of that. Cost was one. The other theme was real concern with what's going to happen with the Clark School. So I think this, you know, kind of informed our path here. There was a desire for folks to they wanted to see that remain a community school. And they wanted to understand the options, to Greg's point. I think people really wanted to, even though there had been a number of scenarios and options worked through, the community didn't see it as much as they wanted to, or have that. So I think those are the things, and I think, you know, I think the tax burden is a challenge for people, which is why you find us sitting here having a conversation about 2,000 square feet in bleachers, right? I don't want to have that conversation. I would love for our community to have those bleachers, but I also think that right now the community has told us in multiple different ways that, you know, they're kind of really stretched with what they can support. And we're faced with a quandary of the community is stretched and we have a great need. And so how do we match those two? And I think over the decades, you know, that those are boards have had to make concessions, and that's how we've ended up with sort of a patchwork of buildings and things, and that's what we are. So does that answer your question, Mike? I'm sorry,
does.
there's a lot, you got a lot of feedback
No,
there,
that's
but I
good.
mean, I think there are some
I
themes.
took some notes as we prepare for the next steps here, so
Yeah.
appreciate it.
This current reduces the square footage by about 10K. And it was 100.
145, 146.
So that's an 8% reduction in square foot.
I think we need to go more.
I do too.
So
But a lot of the
8%
things-
reduction in square footage, to John's point, it's possible that interest rate and inflation overcomes, you could go 10,000 square feet less and come back to the town with more cost.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, going off this, $400 a square foot, we're at 54 million right now.
Yeah,
Makes me wanna throw up.
Unless we
Yeah.
start reducing and going off of that square foot cost, I don't know if it's saying. We don't wanna exceed 120. I mean, we go 120, that's 48 million. I mean, going off of our proposed cost. per square foot.
120,000 square feet.
is the square foot cost include like furniture?
No, we
It's just
still have,
building.
it's just building it.
Building,
Just
We-
building.
site and building, oh my
Stock
god.
costs, we need to pick up technology,
That's what I mean,
security,
Todd.
we need to pick up portables. We're abatement of the building as far as the owner, so if we're 48 million hard costs. I mean, let me pull.
It's 54 million right now.
It is, I mean, I can tell you our project breakdown of cost and hard that got us,
$400 a square foot. It's
because we as the
400
owners.
doesn't include soft costs?
No, 400 is just hard
This was
cost.
our push in 2020, was projecting out to here and saying, we need to do something now.
Yeah, oh, I
This is the point,
understand. Yeah.
Right, and unfortunately,
you're at
we didn't-
50,
we
I
didn't
mean-
tell the story well enough.
Well, I don't dispute anything anybody said. But if this is the direction that has to happen, to get it across the finish line. To cut that kind of, I don't know if that
Can't even
is
cut that much.
And if you do it, I don't know if you can do it now. You know, I mean, I think that takes a lot of redesign and a lot, you know, I just don't know. About
So-
timing for that kind of redesign of the plan.
On the $52 million project that we proposed last year, 42,815 were hard costs, and we were carrying 99,247,000 for soft costs, which combined together gets us to the 52.
Yeah, so in the 400 square feet times, what was it last year, 140?
Yeah, it was like 146, I
Well, we
think.
were a
last
little
year.
higher, but 400 was a new number, right? That was not, that's not.
That was our number.
posted, so, yeah, I think it includes.
So is it, that's, it's not, you can see it, but I mean, if you're trying to cut $10 million on the 400s, it's 25,000 square feet.
We were at 363.
And do that.
I don't know how you do
You
it.
can't do it,
Unless-
there's no way, cause you can't, not with that, I mean, even if you took the gym out, that's only 10,000 square feet, you need another 15,000 square feet to cut it, to get it to 40 million.
I think what we need to bring forward, my personal feeling is that elections have consequences, right? Like. It costs more money this year because it does, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not
Suggesting.
I'm not suggesting that we don't. Take what we need forward. My suggestion is that we have to be very deliberate, very thoughtful, and very restrained in what we need and what we take forward. You know, and I know that the administration team here has done a lot of work to make certain that we're whittling it down. That's where the summer work came in. That's where those numbers get really important. And then match, you know, make sure we're matching the space to how we're teaching and how we continue, you know, plan to continue teaching, which I, you know, I know because I've been in this work for a long time that that's what we're doing. But however, we need to.
And you have the project that passes cannot have portables for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
Or 10 years, you can't, you can run out of time. So how are you gonna, say they have the kind of dough, you're cutting 1,000 square foot classroom. Cause it's not closets that's gonna get you that. It's not shaving stuff. Yeah, get rid of the gym, but that gets you somewhere if you decide. I think I would struggle with it, but I understand it. But if you eliminate another 10,000, that's 10 classrooms, which means we're not doing what we need to do, which is getting out of portables.
Right.
It's just, we can't find it, because what we're trying to do is build a school that has a little bit of capacity for growth and eliminates the portables. And creates room at the middle school, because they're not, they need room to breathe, they need some elbow room there. That's what we're trying to do, you're really making impact for that money, you're making a significant impact in fifth grade coming here, significant impact in middle school. It is, taking 7 classrooms out of there helps that school. Not a little.
That's a good point. When we have, throw it up on the screen.
This isn't just, it's getting rid of portables and helping the middle school, it's saving, you know, the middle school now is it's a repair, it's not even a renovate, it's a repairs project.
Cost.
And I can, 7 classrooms at the middle school, 3.5 hours. We organize as a school, there's more teaming, more space, more, you can have the storage.
No, I
units,
mean, you know, we
storage
put
on the
like
wall,
the-
I've never seen that.
It's a pod and a half.
What's that?
It's a pod and a half, a floor and a half, 7 classrooms.
So it helps us.
Yeah, of course it does.
But do we frame that maybe and not just talk about this as the Clark Wilkins renovation or whatever we're calling it, cause you're right, like that's, even I was not thinking about that piece during this conversation until you said it. It's taking away all the things we don't have to do at AMS. I mean, not, you know, the repairs obviously have to be done, but the space issue that we were trying to address with the last plan is now no longer, because our space issue is much improved.
And to Greg's point, you are redesigning like for 5th grade at elementary school, which is elementary, that's where we want them. We want them to be the oldest in the school, not the youngest in school in 5th grade. We want the 6, 7, 8 middle school. So that is an educationally, is a strong pedagogical decision and research-based pedagogical decision.
That's a nice word. Ready for
But I feel like those words, like saying developmentally appropriate, all of those things sound very education-y. And, well, no, I know for me, it's, but because I've been involved in, but I feel like maybe the public
I like education.
doesn't see, I like, when you just said the fifth grade should be the oldest and not the youngest, that
That
spoke more to
sticks.
me than educationally appropriate or developmentally appropriate. Because although I understand what you're saying, I don't know that John Q. Public necessarily is looking at that and saying, oh, that means they'll be the oldest rather than the youngest.
In Amherst Middle School, we Trillium at 6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
This is, you're getting a lot of wins here. And I know, I appreciate Greg, but a win for, if you are without a child and young or old, what is in for this for you? It's the gym.
Yeah.
That's what you get from this. You get 6 to 10 all winter. He's what, right? I said this, I had to do this in my last place. Wrote a commitment to the town saying if this passes, we will do this.
I have a question. Let's talk about the gym, because I agree with you, Greg, that if we're gonna have the gym, we should have some access points for after hours for the community. But I think that's built into
There is one.
this plan. So Brad, could you talk about that a little bit? Just like maybe where the doors are and how we would shut down the rest of the school in after hours? Because I know at one point in time we had talked about that.
Sure. My understanding was that you could put doors here and here, and therefore you could exit
Here.
this way
So
and this way to get out. And so you're basically shutting down the back of the school from here back.
And
then there's a toilet there for the gym.
There's gang bathrooms there, so that's great.
And that's not, that access would not that would not prevent people from using it.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, great, you're right, having it totally external with its own entrance called public entrance is wonderful. But having a direct access when you cordon off the stuff, that's good, that's standard. So no one's gonna say, well, I'm not comfortable in the elementary schools, they have to walk through a little bit to see the gym, that's not gonna happen.
Typically, if we're letting them use the gym, they're gonna want bathrooms anyway. Bathrooms aren't typically in the gym, they're in the external hallway. It's just, it's a good design. It's user friendly, let's say.
I think the thing about the gym not to lose sight of is the gym is an educational space like any other. And, you know, there's lots of places where any of us non-educators can look at this plan and say, why do you need this and why do you need that? You know, and as an architect, I'm always trying to restrain myself on that because I'm not an educator. As my wife likes to say, I color for a living. But the size of the gym is dictated by a lot of things, and some pretty important ones are how many gym classes do you want to function properly at one time, and where are you going to have an all-school assembly of 860 students. That's I think this gym is really one of your few choices. Probably a good side note to that is the 70 by 100 gym size is actually a New Hampshire Department of Education planning recommendation. It's not a requirement. It's just a recommendation, but it's what they consider to be appropriate and good practice for an elementary school gym.
So I guess I struggled back at the beginning of the meeting when we were talking about square footages. Is I know we're looking to reduce, but just going, and it makes perfect sense what you're saying with chaseways and giving access for construction. But I mean, it's a significant increase in the project just for classroom spaces, which makes me think of looking at the other spaces as well. Because what I'm looking at, Brad, is just in classrooms, going off the numbers we sent, and then the numbers that we actually have on the plan, we have an additional 4,200 square feet just in grades 1 through 5 classrooms. If we're able to look at the rest of the building still being appropriate for chases, but are we able to reduce the overall size other than what we're renovating? Because that is what it is, to get us down to reducing up to 10,000 without hurting the building or the program? Because if we're reducing 4,200 just in classroom spaces, and we decide not to go with bleachers, that's 6,200 square feet between the bleachers and the classrooms. And then I know we've gone off the program, but I'm looking at the main office spaces and we have 3 conference rooms in the main office. And if we need 3 conference rooms, that's great. I'm just looking at that suite. And maybe it's looking at these spaces and just reducing a couple of square feet per space, which overall makes a big difference in the building. Cause I mean, we're at 4,200 with just classroom spaces, and if we're looking to drop 10,000, I mean, we're almost halfway there.
Well, if you're following that philosophy, Roger, I would recommend. I mean, basically, you're looking at changing the program. If you're gonna open that box, then I would recommend looking at your computer labs. You know, are you doing 1-to-1 devices? Do you need computer labs? And if you do you need 2? Occupational physical therapy for a school this size, 2 of them at 600 square feet apiece is a lot. Staff toilets for every single grade when they're almost across the hall from each other is a lot. A workroom for each grade. You know, you could do 1 workroom for each wing. You know, there's a lot of things you can look at. You know, toilet rooms for first grade is slightly unusual. I guess all I'm saying is if you're going to open that box, you know, and examine program, there's some bigger fish here.
Are we able to, without getting in depth in program, Brad, are you able to just reduce the amount you're using for chases in each space? I mean, I understand what you're saying, us looking at the program, making sure it doesn't affect the program, but if we're going off the square foot numbers we propose, that reduces the project. You know what I mean?
930. Yeah, 933 could be, you know, 910. I wouldn't reduce it less than 910. I would strongly recommend against that. I think if you're asking for trouble.
And we definitely go off your recommendations. It just seems like, I don't want to say we have a little fluff in here. It just seems we're a little bit bigger than we need to be, Brad, that's all.
Yeah, the other side of that though is, you know, if you have a case manager that's supposed to be 250 square feet, if I make that 250 square feet, it just goes into the corridor. I don't get anything out of that. So in terms of reducing the size of the building, I could do that. There's just minimum proportions that rooms should be in order to function properly. But I mean, yeah, absolutely. I can stick a belt around this thing and tighten it up. But it's kind of a half measure.
And again,
It's not really solving, it's not getting you to the goal line.
I don't want Brad going through and reducing the whole project based on my opinion. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it definitely the committee's feedback, Kathleen's feedback as to what is definitely needed to go within the
Can you
building.
just remind me, our current first grade classrooms are about this size right now?
Brad, do you have the existing plan right now? I'm just working off my phone.
Around 900 as it is, and
Wanna make it smaller.
I don't know that we want, like, if we're gonna take anything off, to me, it's more of those shared spaces. Like, I would rather talk about bleachers in the gym and the PE storage closet and the book room space and the media center, like a little smaller, or the computer lab attached to it a little smaller than classrooms that kids are learning in all day. Like, our rooms our instructional models have students working in smaller groups. They're not contained to rows and chairs, and kids need ability to move around in an environment.
575 square feet is a penny on the tax rate.
Yeah.
1,000, so a classroom costs 2 cents on your tax rate.
And if you're looking at the current configuration with the first and second grade hallway right now, our total number of sections, and now this is just, of course, we would have the second floor, you'd be creative, you'd make everything work. We have 8 and 8 right now, and this first floor would not fit 8 first grade and 8 second grades, because there's one flex classroom shared between first and second grade because we reduced the programming. Now, next year, we're anticipating 7 and 7, so that model works well, right? And of course, in that year, we have grade levels at 3rd grade that have 6, so you would be flexible, but it's, to me, like, it's not that we have additional core classroom space here.
It's like your biggest space now is 834 square feet from seeing him scroll.
Okay,
It's 10,000 square feet.
You're averaging classroom sizes anywhere from 800 to 850, I think, in general. Your median average is somewhere around 825 in your existing building.
Madam Chair. Are we discussing the other option today?
I don't think so. Brad, you're not ready to talk Reno today, are you?
No,
Option
I can let you see how the sausage is being made if you like, but it's not cooked. It's not even wrapped in a good casing. So, but I'm
We'd
happy
like
to show
see what
you.
have.
Sorry?
Yeah.
We
no,
would like to
yeah.
see what you have, Brad, if that's
I
fine.
mean, if you have something to share, I think that'd be good, just so we can have some conversation about it, but before we do that,
This is really a very difficult spot,
yeah, I feel like we need to,
because it's a 20,
Wrap this.
so we're, as Greg, to Greg's point, he said this for a year. We're projecting academic, right, and programmatic needs for the next 20 years. Where the trend is going, right, yield to Kathleen. More spaces for individualized supports and therapies. It seems to be a trend to reduce. And I just know it's never, I know, yes, Greg, we gotta pay for it fair. But for short money, we're talking about the difference between big money and a little less big money. You could create a school that you're going to just walk down the hall and see pie-shaped stuff like what we're enduring at middle school. And not have enough state, like, I just worry that this is the biggest fear you have, and Mike hasn't worn out because the biggest fear is that you're going to shrink a project in a way that continues frustrating you when it's brand.
Yeah.
I agree.
For meaningful money, but short money. 800,000 square foot house, 20 cents in the 800,000 square foot house, about $160. That's the difference between potentially a school that meets your needs for 20 years and a school that is still a headwind for 20 years. And it's not, and I know we all regret the first year when the money was cheap, 2%, and it was 83 for both projects. I did a facility project. The biggest fear, and we didn't, and I know Roger is surprised by this, we went from this times a square foot. We didn't have a construction manager cost it. 10.2 million, we were gonna make it work.
wow,
And we did it off this because we were running out of time. We
yeah,
didn't have time. We went September and we went in front of the town, and the town wasn't,
Crazy.
it wasn't, to be honest, there wasn't as much animus.
It was Hopkinton though.
And well, it was small, but it wasn't, I was here for 20 years, no one,
sure,
and they weren't, so.
different.
And it passed, and we got more for it because the bidding and the money was so cheap.
Yeah.
I just would caution this group, and what you don't wanna do is do something that is not going to meet your needs for at least a while. But I get it, because what you just said, if it doesn't get across the finish line, Steve, it doesn't matter what freaking needs would be, because this isn't meeting their need.
But see, when you say that, it makes me think of when we started this whole journey. And the people who built Wilkins were like, oh, as soon as we opened the doors, we needed to put on an addition.
The
Oh,
very next
and then
year.
The very next year, oh, then we
Very
built
next
the
year.
NPR. So here we are, 45 years later,
I know.
and we are making that
And same thing
same
happened at Souhegan.
decision.
That's how we can open at Souhegan. Boom.
Yeah.
Middle school 73, 75 edition.
Right, and that's why, because you end up short at trying to get something across the finish line, and you're
Right.
projecting, and it's gonna be more expensive to do the addition, and you lose credibility and all that stuff. I agree with you,
I feel like that's the story.
Roger, I
We can't
understand
repeat it.
what you're trying to do. But I think the educational requirements override you.
I agree with that 100%. That's why I offer my opinion, but defer to the
Oh, no,
committee. for the
I'm not
record.
anti you at all, Raj.
I felt that.
No.
Did you?
No, not at all, Steve, not, no, please, no.
No, I'm just,
He's trying to save a dollar. I understand.
no, and you might, I just wanna make sure the other end's on the table. Because this is our shot.
I agree, and I was just looking at it in our review, we spelled out what we wanted for square footage, and then just seeing that square footage come in bigger, at that time, we were good with the 900. I don't disagree that having more is better. It was just us to take a second chance at that review.
And I mean, we may have to do that. So I think to be really thoughtful and judicious and still meet the education needs for the 20 years, I'm not convinced we can do that in the next month. To get this to March.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to rush any, I mean, I'm happy with this, and I know, but to take 10,000 square feet off this is not an afternoon in a trailer.
No, there's a lot of work to do.
Deep thought, and looking at other, and I'll be honest, if that might be necessary, that's not a March of 2024 for me.
No, I agree with that.
No.
That's a substantive change that you rush something and we pass it and it doesn't meet our needs, that's worse.
Yeah, our timeline is so fast right now, we know that, you know what I mean, we're head heavy.
And you can ignore everything I said, because I'm just a rank gamer sitting next to Mike.
No, I think honestly, like, you're right. I mean, you have to build something that's gonna meet the needs now, next 20 years, and then my thing is, there's a lot of developments that are pending in this town to be built. If you're adding more families to the town over time, we're cutting square footage, we're not gonna meet the needs to assume the expanding population of the town if we build something smaller than that.
I talked with a developer this week who asked for updated enrollment by certain developments. And he's got a person who wants to do a 30 to 40 house development, but over his last development of his career, over 15 years. He says, Steve, it's about what would a 3 new house development over 15 years do? I said, well, that kind of trickle, is it right? It's not. And he's carrying, in one of his developments, he's carrying a teacher and a half for every 5 houses. So impact fees and additional costs, he's carrying a teacher and a half. We talked about that through last year. And he also said something interesting, not to be on this thing. He said he did a 57 unit, 55 or above in Greenland, New Hampshire. 70% of the buyers were out of state.
Wow.
It's New York and Mass are coming to New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah.
It's not. So and so I can't believe it is, because I was chair for retirement, but no income tax
Yes.
and no sales.
Okay, so option 2, I'm gonna kind of get us back on track here. I'm gonna do just a round robin. Everybody can go around real quick. Any final thoughts on this option before Brad gives us a sneak peek at how the sausage is made on option 1? I'll start with Greg. Greg, you have anything you want to add on feedback for Brad today, for the committee today on option 2?
Well, I was happy to hear about sort of his take on what he thought where there was a little bit extra, like the extra bathrooms, for example. I don't know what the other alternative would be, but I'm glad that he has an idea of maybe where some that is. And as I'm thinking here, maybe we have a better sense of what a maximum price would be. I don't know if it's possible to kind of give Banwell an estimate and say, here's a price we think we can afford. What's the best you can do within this? I mean, sort of coming at a different angle, but anyway, those are my thoughts over things.
So you're breaking up a little bit, so I just want to make sure we're capturing your thoughts correctly, because Christine's taking notes. So you said you would like to maybe have the committee talk through and consider at some point if we give back into the price a little bit differently than what we're doing. So not looking at the program, but backing into the price and building the program to the price. Is that fair?
That's what I'm thinking, because I hear the conversation and I tend to agree that this is likely not going to pass if it failed because of the price last year, then this is likely to be the same price. So something has to be done. You know, I've just in the past that we raised volunteer funds that buys down the tax hit on people, that maybe gets more no votes switch to yes, but that hasn't gone over very well. So another way to look at this is to go to the architect and say, here's what we think we can raise for funds. What's the best school you can design within the parameters that you're aware of from DOE that gets us over the finish line? Thanks.
Great, thanks, Greg.
So I would,
Oh,
I would
I'm
just
sorry.
try, yeah, I'd like to put my 2 cents in on that, because it's an interesting concept. The danger in handing me a dollar figure and saying, design me a school based on this dollar figure is that, and I said this before I irresponsibly threw out all of these program suggestions, is that I'm not an educator. Uh, we're not designing brick and mortar, we're designing an educational experience for the children that gives them proper development. And that can only really be done by an educator. So it all has to spring ultimately from the program, which is why we spend all that time in the spreadsheet up front, because that gives us a solid foundation for designing the building. What we find is that without that foundation, we end up designing in circles. And we could push walls around forever, and still have an awful school, even if it looks good and you can afford it. If it's not strongly based in the educational program that you need. So if there are changes to the program you folks want to do, those should come from the educators. And I am happy to make suggestions on sizes of things, but I'm not enthusiastic about making suggestions on volume of classrooms and what's a proper size classroom that for educating your students in your community.
Thanks, Brad. Any final words on option 2 today?
No, I've already said, let's do it.
Yeah, okay. John's in favor of the plan. Christine?
I'm with John, mostly because Steve has now put in my mind about how Wilkins was too small when we started. And I wish when I moved here 15 years ago, somebody would have taken a stand and said, hey, we are already gonna be out of space. Because my kids went through here and were hot and uncomfortable, and they went to AMS and they were hot and uncomfortable, and we need to break the cycle. We need to do this right. And I think we've compromised a lot. I think Kathleen has made a lot of compromises in the educational piece without sacrificing the kids' experience as much as we can. So I like this. Me and John, we're together on it.
Great. Kathleen?
My only, it has nothing to do with the big picture here, the upstairs, Brad, I just wanna make sure, like, those staff toilets that are near the 3rd and 5th grade classrooms in that, like, classroom wing overlooking the back, the gym, I do feel like those should be transitioned to, student single stall bathrooms for the 3rd and 5th graders, so to me, that's a little bit of a change. I think that having one set of toilets for 3, 4, and 5 on that floor is not going to be enough. So if there's a way to get 2 and 2 from those spaces somehow, however that looks, that would be something I'd be looking for a change from this model.
So to
Mike?
just make sure we're being clear, you'd like this to be a student bathroom
Yes.
and keep the staff bathroom here and make this a student bathroom.
Yeah, at least one student bathroom on each side there. Yes, so yeah, one by 3rd grade, one by 5th grade. And then you still have several staff bathrooms across that hallway.
And the wing down here is fine. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Mike?
My take is, if this is something that people wanna put forth on a ballot in March, knowing that it might not pass, but creating the narrative and the story that you wanna tell for the next time and stay consistent with that, I think that's, what I hear from people with various opinions. Like, hey, what's the story, what's the reasoning, what's the logic? And I think that's where my head is at right now. I do agree with the sentiment of not creating a space that's not gonna be viable in, 4, 5, 6 years, just to get it across the finish line. I do think that we need to continue to say like, hey, we got here because we didn't do things in the past. We're here because we want to do things here. And this is the school that we need for, so that's where my head is going as I kind of like listen to the people who are working on this for far longer than I have. Because at some point, you know, I will tell you coming in, I never imagined Amherst, New Hampshire would have this state of affairs of some of the buildings that they have. Never would have imagined. And that's what I can bring to the table. You know, people should be a little, kids shouldn't go to school hot and sweaty with leaky buildings and the second most affluent town in New Hampshire. You just shouldn't.
Than any town in the country, actually, is my feeling,
You
but
really
yes,
should. You
yeah,
really should.
yeah.
So that's where my head's
Yeah.
going as I listen to you guys, so.
Steve?
The day this project opens and is fully occupied, you have changed the educational experience for every single student in Amherst K through preschool. Because even Clark will be, because we will realign and do some things, but certainly the middle school has a significant impact. The day this opens, the middle school is a better school. The day this opens, Wilkins is a better school. And the sooner it happens, the cheaper it's gonna be. Because eventually they have to be fixed. And this project is I think it's as pretty close to as meaningfully tight as it's going to. There's margin changes, but it's not gonna significantly change the warrant article. It's in the margins, without impacting education program in the future. It's a margin change, it's not a significant change, it's changing the program in the future. That's what I mean.
Roger, any final?
I think we're just, in my opinion, I think we're bigger than we need to be. I think that we can reduce square footage without impacting the program, even if it, I mean, I just think we're bigger than we need to be with this.
Yeah, so that, when I looked at it last night, when you sent it over, I share Roger's sentiment. And again, it's like I said at the beginning of the meeting, it's based off everything that I heard last year and kind of that uphill that we were, you know, facing, which is why the board did the retreat and we did the work this summer. So as much as we can get close to the requirements that we sent in July, that is where I feel good. I'm happy with the, you know, kind of the layout and the functioning and the program. But if there's any opportunity, and again, I don't wanna take away from the program, but the work done over the summer was thoughtful with that program in mind. Right?
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, Roger, but.
Yes, no. I was there.
So that's my only hesitation is the number still feels, the square footage number still feels, you know, it feels like one that, you know, to use Greg's phrase earlier, that when we put this out there, people are gonna say that we're being opulent. And so I think we have to really be able to walk through every space in this building and describe to them why it's not opulent and how we're going to use it. But if there's any opportunity to shore some of those rooms up and shrink them down, and I know it pains me to say it because I also don't wanna, you know, be part of the group that built the school that the next year needs an addition, right? So, but anywhere that we can do that, you know, that's how I feel right now. I don't know if that's helpful. So I guess to summarize, you know, what happened today, we've decided no, you know, we're reducing bleachers, right? I mean, that, we all agree to that, bleacher reduction. Brad, I don't know that anything else.
I wasn't here for that. Are we taking the whole 1,900 square feet away, or did we compromise to a square footage? I don't wanna revisit it, but I was just asking.
I'm asking
Have the
too.
smallest. I mean, whatever it takes to have 2 rows is fine with me.
2 rows is, what's 2 rows? Is that, are you trying to get to 250 instead of 500? I mean,
I'm just trying to get to 2 rows.
Steve's just looking for 2 rows of bleachers, Brad. I don't think there's an amount that goes with that.
I don't know how much, I don't know what the standard.
Yeah.
You know,
What's the standard square foot for a bleacher for a person?
right. It's 2 rows.
true.
It's enough for an elementary school. I mean, Brookline has, Hollis has 7 or 8 rows.
So there's no
That's what
quantity
they have.
target for the number of students that sit in the bleachers. It's 2 rows of whatever it is.
No number requirement there. And then going along with that space, the rooms alongside the gym could get smaller. So the book room is larger than the staff room right now. The book room could probably go down 150 square feet. The PE storage closet might be able to get a little smaller. It's pretty large right now, and there is still storage off of the multipurpose room too. That's not going away. So maybe there's ways to grab a few square feet here and there. The IT admin, that's a pretty large space. We have one IT admin. And I don't know that that's all the servers in the building too. There's still closets within the building.
Yeah, that's gonna be his work, he or she's working space. But
Yeah.
remember too, you have fifth grade coming down, so it'll be a little bit of an increase, but. Then maybe.
What we find with school systems is that if they're on a one-to-one system, they're asking for spaces this big. Basically because it's a workroom and it's also a storage room for all of the devices. So if that's not the case here, and it's just an office, I mean, an office can be, for an IT admin, can be 200 square feet with equipment. But if it's one-to-one and you're trying to store, you know, the devices for 800 students,
No,
gonna
we're
be a
not
big
one to
room.
one. And I don't
Not
foresee
even
us
in fifth grade,
going,
we're 2 to 1.
yeah, I don't foresee us going
Yeah.
as that. I
Yeah,
think you can
yeah.
go a little smaller. You would want some workspace in there with like, but I don't think that you need it to be that big right now.
But do you want
Okay,
that?
well, I
extra
think we're gonna need, I would ask the committee then to give me an updated program as to what the size spaces they would like. And
Yeah.
I'll use that menu to
Take another one.
adjust the building size.
I agree with you, Brad. That's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take us sitting down and looking at every space by space
Yeah.
and shaving what we can.
We'll create a spreadsheet and send it off to you. We'll talk about timelines on that, Brad, okay?
Yeah, if you could adapt the spreadsheet we already have and just color the cell that you changed, like you did over the summer, that'll work.
Perfect.
Great, all right, moving on. We have,
Before you wrap up, you're asking to reduce all the spaces closer to the program square footage. Am I correct?
yes,
So
Yes.
reduce the size of all the classrooms?
Yes, but we'll help with our internal review when we send that spreadsheet back to you,
You
Brad.
want us to do that all at once?
Yeah.
So we can look at it all
Yeah.
comprehensively, as
Yes.
opposed to piece now and piece.
Yeah.
Brad, we'll look at all that again. We'll send you something in writing.
Okay, and lastly, before we leave this topic, I just want to gain a little bit of clarity on this very detailed item that can really impact square footage. Are the cubbies going to be in the classroom or in the corridor?
I would love for them to be in the corridor.
Corridor is the way to go.
Yep. That would be amazing, Brad. That would be building with instruction in mind. If the boots could be in the hallway.
That's what we did on the addition. and
Yep.
It made a big difference.
We don't need lockers. Fifth graders don't need lockers. They could still just have cubbies.
So this, just so you know, these corridors are sized for that.
Okay.
I was looking at the corridors for square
That
footage
fits.
reduction, but we just took that off the table.
Yeah.
each room.
But that's a great point
Yeah.
Shannon just brought up. So if you're shrinking the rooms down a little bit, hearing from you that there's gonna be exterior storage for
Yeah.
student belongings is going to be very helpful.
And if your mean size room right now is 825, and we're saying take it to 910, it's still.
You just go with
larger.
hallways too.
And you're
Ain't
getting
no
the,
cubbies.
like the
Hallways,
cubbies are,
hallway side with cubbies in the hall matters.
yeah.
Yeah.
And cause you can't, it's, Mike and I gotta go, I got a parent meeting. I just made you host
I saw that.
and I'm gonna hand.
Yeah,
And so.
I just have to go.
Budget's.
All right, Brad, does that get you what you need on this option that we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, really, what I'm getting out of that is the buildings to be revised per the revised program. Are you still there? Oh. I'm not hearing anybody. I see you now. You're on mute. Can can you unmute?
I have the same problem that they are on mute. Roger Preston, your computer is on mute.
Now I'm the owl.
We're having some
Yep,
technical.
you're good
Okay.
now. We got you. Thank you.
Got me now. Okay, I apologize,
Great.
in the office
So my
trailer
take,
and having some technical challenges, my apologies. So I just
So-
said to Brad, if you have any other questions for us before we move forward.
no, my takeaway is that I'm standing by for the revised program, and I'll
Yep.
adjust the building accordingly, and I'll also tighten up the rooms to make them closer to the program.
Perfect. And Greg, did you have something else or?
Nope, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Let's see how the sausage is getting made on the Reno then. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm slap happy.
Venom, it's a car.
So there hasn't been a lot of time since we met on Friday, to do more than option 2, but I did drop this block in, and I think it's informative. So these are first grade size classrooms with toilets in each room. They block 3 existing classrooms windows. But they do fit within this courtyard, and they are outside of the wetland. See if I can. So, we're taking some of the playground by doing this. But it's just grass, as it were. It's actually dirt, but it's a grass area that we're taking, essentially. And we could turn these 3 classrooms we could break them up into support spaces, etc. I mean, I would run this corridor straight through. This is an expansion of the administration. Right now, this is the library. And, so essentially media center here, media tech ed here. We'd have another first grade classroom, the 7th one over here. I don't think we could fit it over here. I looked at trying to, you missed the fun, but I looked at trying to, like, connect these 2.
Could help.
So you actually had a track, as it were, that you can travel around. The challenge is twofold. One is that, and I apologize, this is a little rough, but I had done it before and then erased it because it didn't work. But you get to watch how bad I am at Revit. But essentially, I could get a small instructional space on this side of the corridor and on this side of the corridor, but this becomes a rather inefficient area here. You want enough clearance here, not only for fire separation, but also, these are windows for a classroom. And it also creates a nice passage for, if students want to walk through here and walk out. I could put another classroom right here. But it would be tough to do on this side without sacrificing more nice instructional space here. The benefit of doing that and closing this in is we could probably get the 7 classrooms in. This one would be a little modest, but I think we could make it happen. So if you want, I will close it in, but that's the price you pay for it.
Is the pathway gonna be concrete? You're gonna have a canopy over it? For the
Well,
season?
yeah. So I was thinking we'd do a full corridor. I mean, so
Connector.
yeah, so it's something like, like this.
And just, I'd be concerned with access to that for snow removal,
Mhm.
cause now we can't get a truck or any equipment in there to get the snow out.
I was thinking about that too, Roger. It's a concern.
That
Yeah,
middle part just stays extra snowy, right? Like you're creating like a court, it's a courtyard then.
Yeah.
It's not like like that's just a courtyard. You would come in here, we'd have we'd try to do like a garden or a courtyard area. You wouldn't be using it for need of putting a vehicle in there, I would say too, though.
But then it limits, I mean, what's the point of having the courtyard? You can't use it half the year when it's filled with snow and. you can't
Yeah.
shovel it, there's nowhere to take, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's nowhere to remove the debris is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
At some point, we'd wanna get things in and out of there and we're completely locking ourselves out.
Yeah.
Right.
The courtyard's not bad in my opinion for these classrooms because then that's like a really quiet outdoor space with natural light still in some way, right? Like you're getting a window here while not having recess going on or anything even like around the classroom other than this type of courtyard in there. You would, in this model, the playground would need to be, I thought when we looked at it last time, like that,
Yeah, we'd
where the
have to
portables
relocate
are,
it.
like you
Yeah,
would be
expand it.
relocating, expanding, like that grove area over by the portables, so you wouldn't really be using the space in the same way at all.
Yeah.
I had a hard time picking up some of the audio
Oh,
there,
I
but
I
we'll
did
see.
the playground would be moved in this model, like to where our existing portables are now when we were looking at it last time. So like I wouldn't be as worried if this became a courtyard space versus, what we're kind of used to it being right now, which is more of like that blacktop that's an access space around the building.
Could you use that as an educational space, like an outdoor educational space?
You could. In the winter, it wouldn't
it's
be
not
able,
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
if it's
I mean,
buried
that's-
in snow.
I liked in our last round of this, the courtyard, I liked because of the natural light, and because of the quiet space. Some of the critiques though that we heard back in the community were those kind of issues, like, well, but what happened, how are we getting the snow out, how are we maintaining it, and I think that's valid. So I guess for me, I really kind of defer to Roger on that, if he can. Maintain the space, then great, I think you'll use it, right?
I guess, Brad, where were you going with the design? Because you didn't have it in the block that you showed us, so obviously you didn't keep that in the design. Or have you just not progressed enough to add that to the design? Is this one done for you, Brad?
Are you talking about this block here?
Yeah,
Yeah, I haven't gotten to it yet.
okay, that's fine.
I mean, honestly, that was simpler. As an exercise than dealing with this. Just sticking an addition right here is pretty simple to do. And then up here, this is what you saw before. So, but we just saw it as filled regions. But this is a corridor. This is another courtyard with corridor access to both music rooms. This would be after school storage and so forth. You take up the storage that's up on the stage right now. We'd put a ramp up to the stage on this side of the corridor that would go in with maintenance and facility storage right here. Corridor that goes straight through. This is the kitchen expansion that's been on the other option. It's not always pretty to watch the sausage being made.
We appreciate you, allowing us this peek.
So how long would that, so if we were trying to extend, Brad, like that exit. Currently where our fourth grade is at the end of the hall there and made like a corridor tunnel, like that'd be a long interior. Kind of empty hallway.
You're talking about this here, the L
Yeah.
shape?
Yep.
What you wanna do with it?
About 80 feet.
Yeah.
That's a long ways.
That's a long ways.
I almost lean towards more of making that another set of classrooms and making that space a courtyard in the middle
That'll,
than having a really long corridor. Or I guess you wouldn't even have the corridor, because if you did the corridor, you would lose the access into here anyway.
Yeah, if you add these
Yeah.
here, we walk through these halls or this hall.
But didn't we kind of talk about putting a bump up where he has his cursor now, like some type of like additional expansion right there? If you did that, then you could connect a corridor and it would be smaller,
Yep.
or leave it open for access.
Mhm.
If you added a bump out there to gain 2 more classrooms. There's no more using the
No,
ruler and
that's
the
how I've been
protractor
doing
and
it. Draft.
when blueprints were blueprints.
We're marveling at the technology, Brad.
Is that, well, it's kind of fun until you start to try to clean it all up. And I mean, what you're seeing is a pretty dirty process. I mean, if you move this down here. And then
34, then we have on the other side.
Mhm.
Right, like
It takes
that,
off a
it
whole
takes
floor.
off a whole floor.
So we have to
That's
do.
just spread out on the Broadway. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Let me make this space.
Never, never.
No, that would be.
Anyway.
Make people mad.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
he just hasn't gotten to it.
Yeah.
I mean, and then technically, down,
Mhm.
go a little bit closer to this line,
Mhm.
if needed for the extra space.
Yeah.
if we made this a classroom, if we did this. Okay, just a FYI here.
And it's just like,
You would need to. We would need to, for code reasons. Put a corridor in here
Mhm.
so that you could get out this way,
Mhm.
because the state considers that courtyard an assembly space.
Yep.
Now, basically, we reversed these doors. We send people out both ways.
you can come access it from both ways too.
Yep. Yeah, but it does come with, I don't want to gloss over the maintenance challenges of this. It becomes kind of a snowball. It's hard to get the snow out of there.
And like, could be like 5-6 feet snow drifts, like
Mhm.
I've seen it before, up to 15 feet on some buildings. So I don't know,
Well,
I don't hate this building.
These are sloped roofs, okay? So the snow comes off of these and dumps. It doesn't, if this is a flat roof, it's gonna just sit up there, right? The beauty of this is, all right, now you just gained a whole grade pod out of
Yeah.
that.
Really like that.
So we just, this doesn't represent an entire floor, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I think, there's potential here.
Puts everyone closer to the center of the building too. I don't know.
Mhm.
We like where you're going with it, Brad.
Yeah.
I would say continue with this.
So you'd like to close in the courtyard then?
We go back and forth, Brad, but
I
education,
like getting the third floor, like, whatever we can do to get that third floor, not a third floor, yes, I support, I struggle with the courtyard, I think that's just creating a problem
Mhm. I can
that we're
see
gonna regret.
So Roger, you saying you can't get a truck in that little,
No.
now when
can't-
they make not in this design, these are all classrooms.
no, I mean like that little easeway, like up, going up
At the top.
at the top, like.
No, that's
I just regular building.
that's a building. This is,
I mean, right next to it though, that's not open?
this is the hallway, you're
That's
coming
how
into
it
the hallway.
attaches to
This is,
the.
you
Oh,
can't see it, but this is a
I thought that
door,
was
this is
the-
the hall, this is the
Oh, I
door,
thought that
these
was
are
the means of
bathrooms.
egress out,
Yeah.
okay.
It's okay, it's hard to see on that.
But how, how did you manage that?
It'd be very difficult, but it might come down to it is just the way the wind blows and we don't get anything in there. I'm just thinking that maintenance perspective.
There's gonna be a winter, we're gonna
Maintenance
rent this
perspective,
for
we're
it.
going to want to get some type of equipment or something in there. Kathleen might even want some type of playground equipment in there or something that also needs to get in there. We'd be restricted on how we could get it in there.
So maybe it's not that this gets closed off, but you're still getting this block of the 8 classrooms on that side, and it's not closed off, you're still extending where you're extending, and maybe you can fit a small group room in, along the side there too, while still having access to that pseudo courtyard, right? So there's enough of a space so Roger could get the plow truck in there. Or an emergency
Well-
vehicle could get in there too.
You could do that. I think you're stretching it a little bit. And the reason I'm saying that is, well, no, I take that back because we could put windows here. So
Mhm,
these classrooms don't have windows facing another building.
mhm.
We could do that.
You could put some upper windows to have, let natural light in.
That feels better to me.
I agree.
What's the code for the fire department having access to that courtyard, Brad?
Um,
Get a truck in there?
they're gonna want this 20 feet apart.
Mhm. You have a Bobcat?
We have just four
Talk about fire
F-250s.
Oh, you don't have to say, you can get a
No,
Bobcat.
snow
and
blowers, that type of stuff.
Take it out,
I mean, in the end, there's not much here. Specialty instructional spaces, there's a ton of opportunity right over here
Right in there.
to
Yeah.
get those. So I would, instead of trying to squeeze all the juice out of this lemon, I think I would say, take it out of these spaces over here for, your SLP, your reading interventionist, et cetera.
Great, all right, so we have about 6 minutes here, this is a great start, Brad, thank you for sharing that with us. If I'm looking at the timeline that we discussed last time, we're looking at 10/26 for our next look at this option, Brad, is that right? Is that what you have, or am I mistaken?
I sent a timeline, follow-up based on what I heard in the last meeting.
Yep,
And this is
and that's what I thought I read,
what I heard.
yeah. So does that still work for you then, 10/26?
You have a question mark next to it, Brad. Is that
Yeah.
because you need time or it's because you were wondering about us?
Let me see here.
Yeah.
Just let me know.
So, well, I think it was a question mark because I didn't know your schedule. I didn't want to set a meeting for you on a Thursday afternoon without checking with you first.
Yeah, so Brad, I think what I'll need to do is to, after this meeting, reach out to the group and get everyone's schedule in order and connect with you, but why don't we keep that 10/26 on
like penciled in? Is there a time of day that you know right now works better for you as I pull our committee here after this meeting?
Yeah, definitely needs to be after 3 o'clock.
After 3.
Yeah,
Okay, I know there is an SAU board meeting that night, which could make it tricky for some. What about if we had to do something on the 27th? Do you have any availability that day? And again, I need to pull the committee still as well, but just so I know what I can look at.
yep, I could do the 27th in the morning. I can do basically as early as 8:30 in the morning that morning. The tricky part about that is I'm only giving myself 3 business days to wrap everything out and give it to this to the CM DEW for estimating. So if we move beyond the 26th, I might have to squeeze the 1st into the 2nd.
But you're not
So-
going to be ready to go before the 26th though, right? Like the 25th
No.
isn't an option to look at, is it?
Well, the idea was to give, because you're not going to see this option 1 essentially until the 25th.
Right.
So this is your chance to change it. And then frankly, I was planning on taking those changes, tweaking it before the 1st and giving it to DEW and you at the same time. So when you see the final version, you're seeing it at the same time as the construction manager. And that's a tight schedule.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that's going to be okay.
Okay. All right, well, we'll group up here and figure out what we can make work for after 3 on the 26th then. Sounds like the preference. And we'll get back to you ASAP.
And I did reach out independently. I took the liberty of reaching out to Matt Wheaton over at DEW and asking him if this schedule worked for him, and his answer was affirmative.
Awesome.
Thank you, Brad.
I don't know anything about civil, but honestly, there's not a lot of civil changes.
No, there's not here, and I already talked to Brad Mosquita about it as well.
When you say after 3, are you talking about 3:30? Or do you need more to get here?
That's a good question. Yeah, like after 3, does that mean we can start at 3 or you need us to start at 3:30 or?
If we do it by Zoom, I can start at 3.
Okay,
And I missed that. Are you in person or Zooming?
Well,
Zoom.
this
Okay.
was working pretty well. If it works for you, it
yeah,
works
I
for
think
me.
this is good.
No, this is just great. I just needed to know if I need to bring a projector and everything.
Yeah, we'll try to not be in this space again.
Please.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah, this was a last
We love
ditch
it.
resort.
Make
All
sure
right.
the
Well,
SA
I don't want to, I don't know what challenges you're facing on that end, but I can tell you on my end, that space
Yeah.
is working really well for me.
Oh, good. Well,
Acoustically, I can
we
hear
just
you
have
guys
to
better
look
in there.
So,
Maybe we just need to work on it. We just need to work on a screen. That's all.
location.
it's a small
Ah.
room. All right, well, I will adjourn at 3:59. Greg, we will be in touch with meeting dates. Thank you for zooming in. I know these times of day meetings can be tricky.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll be in touch in short order, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
all. You can